Hello, I'm Jake, and what I'm about to tell you today will make you reconsider everything you know about friendship, love, and trust. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story that began with me being convinced that I had everything anyone could wish for: a wonderful wife, a reliable friend, and a peaceful, happy life. But what happened shattered everything I believed and changed my view of people and myself. From the very beginning, my wife, Emma, was the ideal. We had been together for over 5 years, and every day seemed better than the last. We dreamed of a future together, planned for a family, and built plans for the years ahead. It would have been hard to believe that the very person I loved could betray me. But the issue wasn't just that she betrayed me. It all started with little things that I initially ignored. Those small changes in her behavior, late nights, strange excuses, changes in her habits, I didn't think much of it. I was sure everything was fine, that it was just part of our usual life. But something deep inside me started to worry. I didn't know why, but I felt something was wrong. And then came the moment when I accidentally stumbled upon something that made my heart stop. One evening, I saw her with Mike, my childhood best friend, the one who had always been there. Mike and I grew up together, shared the most intimate moments, from childhood adventures to supporting each other in adult life. He was the person I considered a brother, the one I never doubted. We were like two halves of the same whole. But what I saw shocked me to my core. They were in a cafe, sitting too close to each other, their glances, the way they behaved. I felt it even before I realized what exactly had happened. I was drenched in cold sweat, unable to understand why I still couldn't believe this was really happening. That was the moment that turned everything upside down. After what I saw, I knew I had to get answers. I confronted Emma, asked her directly, and she couldn't deny it. It turned out that Mike and she didn't just have a fling. Their affair had been going on for months, and I hadn't even noticed. It was a betrayal that stunned me. But even more shocking was the fact that my friend, the one I trusted most in life, had been part of this painful break. It was painful, but over time, I realized that the hardest blow I received wasn't from them. It was from myself. How could I not see what was happening right under my nose? How could I trust so blindly? And the worst part, I didn't even know how this would change me. How it would make me reconsider my views on people, on love, on myself. This video isn't just about how I survived the betrayal. It's also about how I survived and changed after it all. I understand that many of you may go through similar trials. And if you're currently suffering from a painful loss of trust, this video may be the very moment that helps you find the strength to move forward. Because what I learned after it happened changed me. And while I can now say that I've gone through the darkest moments of my life, it made me stronger. When I first met Emma, it was like something magical. We met at a friend's party, and it was that meeting that could be called love at first sight. She was unique, unlike anyone else, and from the very first minute of talking, I felt there was something special between us. Her smile, her laugh, the way she talked about her dreams and values. Everything made me feel like I had found my person. We quickly became an inseparable part of each other's lives. After a few meetings, I realized that my heart belonged only to her. This was the moment when you feel that everything finally falls into place. All previous relationships seemed childish and superficial compared to what we built together. I thought I had found my forever. It wasn't just infatuation. I saw her as my partner, the person I would build a future with. We traveled together, laughed, and supported each other through tough times. Every morning, I woke up looking forward to seeing her again. She was my rock, and I felt we were building something incredibly strong, stable, something that would withstand time and all difficulties. Each day seemed better than the last, and it was an incredible feeling knowing that the love surrounding me was something I could rely on. We planned our future together. We talked about how we would live in 5, 10, 20 years. I bought her small gifts just because We cooked dinners together, laughed at old movies. Everything seemed perfect. And most importantly, we never doubted that the path we had started together would never end. For me, it was more than just a relationship. It was my family, my everything. I thought I had found the best version of myself in her eyes. We were partners in everything, in life, in work, and living. The feeling that I had found my person for life was so strong that I believed nothing was impossible for us. We even started planning vacations, deciding where we would go in the summer, picking homes for the future. And that was the moment when I truly understood we had built something really strong, something that seemed like it could never be broken. But as I now understand, this perfect world we created turned out not to be as unbreakable as I thought. Mike and I met back in kindergarten, and from that moment, we became an inseparable part of each other's lives. We were practically like two brothers born into the same family. Shared memories from school, childhood adventures, bike rides around the neighborhood. All of it was part of our friendship. I even remember how we went to school on the first day, both in our first grader uniforms, holding each other's hands so we wouldn't feel scared. We were always together, and with each passing year, our bond only grew stronger. Although we both changed, our partnership always remained constant. We faced every challenge together, arguments with parents, first significant school disappointments, and the first steps into adulthood. Mike was always there when I needed support, and I was always ready to help him when he needed it. We shared the most significant moments of youth, from carefree weekends to heartbreaking breakups and the first serious life decisions we made. I always knew that whenever life got tough, I could count on Mike. We never kept secrets from each other, even when it came to our deepest fears or worst experiences. We were like one whole. When I met Emma, I was confident that Mike would be the one to support me through every stage of the relationship. We even talked about her, joked about how great we looked together, and how Emma and I would be able to enjoy weekends or organize joint trips. He became part of our shared circle, and for me, it felt entirely natural to see him in our lives. I didn't just trust him. I considered him my brother, someone who would always be there when needed. Mike was always around, even during difficult moments in my life. When Emma and I faced challenges in our relationship, he was the first to support me. Sometimes, when I was sad or unsure of what to do, Mike always had a few wise words to calm me down and remind me that, as men, we should never give up. It was a friendship into which I poured my heart, and I was sure it would last forever. In him, I saw someone I could safely let into my life. I never doubted that this friend would not betray or break promises. And even as we grew older, Mike remained one of the most important and reliable people in my life. I could never have imagined that this very Mike would someday become part of the most painful and challenging betrayal of my life. Over time, I started noticing some things that didn't fit into the usual rhythm of our lives. At first, they were small, seemingly insignificant changes that I tried to ignore. Emma started becoming distant, as if she was pulling away from me, but I tried not to pay attention to it. She began spending much more time at work, which made me a little uneasy. She was always busy, but in the past, even on our busiest days, we'd always find time to talk. The first time I noticed this was when she started staying late at work. Instead of coming home after a regular workday, she often suggested staying at the office for a few more hours. At first, I thought it was just temporary, part of her career ambitions, and I didn't make a big deal out of it. But then, when she started getting annoyed at me for asking about it, I began to feel that something wasn't right. Another moment that alarmed me was her excuses. Once, we had planned an evening together, but she suddenly started finding reasons to cancel. At first, it was minor things like, I forgot I needed to meet a friend, or sorry, something important came up and I can't go. I tried to understand what was happening with her, but I kept making excuses. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she really had a lot going on at work. But when this started happening more frequently, and she found excuses more often, I realized something was beginning to change. It wasn't just about canceling plans. It was more about her overall behavior. She became more nervous, more reserved, and I started noticing that she often checked her phone when we were together, quickly hiding it when I approached, or being overly cautious when I tried to see her messages. This became a serious warning sign for me that something wasn't right. One evening, I decided not to hold back, but to ask her directly. I was sitting in the kitchen, and she came in from work, looking somewhat nervous, and I decided to take the risk. I asked the question, "Emma, is everything okay?" She immediately reacted defensively, as if she already sensed that I had doubts, and said, "Of course, everything's fine. It's just been a tough few weeks." But her reaction was too quick and sharp. It seemed like she was already prepared for the question. I couldn't explain this feeling, but something deep inside me was telling me that these little things were only the beginning of something much bigger. It wasn't just the changes in her behavior or her excuses. It was something I couldn't pinpoint, but that alarmed me. I didn't want to believe it, but something in my heart told me that what I noticed wasn't a coincidence. Those small changes began to take the shape of serious suspicions. And though I didn't want to believe that such a thing could happen, I realized I had to start searching for the truth, because if I kept ignoring it, I could lose everything. One evening, I decided to stop by a cafe to clear my head after a stressful day. I often visited this place because it was one of those spots where you could relax, have a cup of coffee, and sit alone. That evening, I was ready for some peaceful time with myself, but what I saw drastically changed my reality. I walked into the cafe and saw them. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. It could have been a coincidence since I knew Mike often came here. But when my eyes landed on them together, sitting at the same table, I realized something was definitely wrong. My wife, Emma, and Mike were sitting very close to each other. Initially, I thought it might just be a casual meeting between friends. But the longer I watched, the more apparent it became that their behavior didn't resemble ordinary friendship. They were laughing together, and I noticed Mike touch her hand. Instead of pulling away, she stayed still. Her gaze was soft, and her eyes sparkled, the same look I used to see only when we were alone. I stood there, hidden behind the cafe door, feeling my heart race. My intuition didn't fail me. It was that gut feeling when something inside you tells you that things aren't as innocent as they appear. It was like a spark that ignited in my mind, and I couldn't take my eyes off what was happening in front of me. I tried to rationalize it, convincing myself it might look worse than it actually was. But the more I observed, the clearer it became. There was no innocent explanation. They weren't just sitting near each other. They were too close, their bodies touched, and it was the kind of closeness I typically associated with romantic relationships. I felt like an outsider in my own life. I couldn't believe my eyes, but my intuition and heart were screaming that this was no mere friendship. It was something more. I stepped back a few paces to avoid being seen and try to calm my thoughts. But I couldn't. I returned to my table, attempting to process what was happening. My head was spinning with thoughts, and I didn't know what to do next. It was that moment when your worst fears become reality, and you can't find the words to describe it. It wasn't just about seeing my wife with my friend. It was the overwhelming sense that something was happening that I couldn't stop or control. I knew I couldn't turn away anymore. This wasn't just about doubts and suspicions. It was the reality I had to face. My intuition told me something serious was going on, and I knew I had to uncover the truth, even if it would hurt. That night, I couldn't sleep. Everything I had seen at the cafe kept playing over and over in my mind, and my suspicions only grew stronger. I couldn't keep it bottled up any longer. I needed to talk to Emma, or it would consume me from the inside out. I decided that this time, I wouldn't tiptoe around the subject or ask gently as I had before. I had to say everything on my mind. When she came home, I felt like this was my last chance to learn the truth. I stood in the kitchen, watching her enter the room with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. She seemed tired, but completely unbothered by what had transpired between us. It was hard for me, but I gathered all my courage and decided to confront her. "Emma, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. She stopped in her tracks, as if she sensed something was wrong. Her expression became more guarded, and I could tell she already suspected what this was about. "What happened?" she asked, her voice sounding slightly nervous, though she tried to appear composed. I noticed her hands trembling slightly, but she was trying to hide it. "I saw you at the cafe with Mike, and I know something is going on between you two." I blurted out the words, feeling like a stone had dropped from my chest. I watched her closely, observing her reaction, looking for any sign of acknowledgement. She looked surprised at first, but I caught the way her gaze shifted slightly. It was a small moment, but it felt like she was trying to gather herself before responding. I waited with every ounce of strength I had because, honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear what she had to say. "Are you starting this again?" she said, and her words hit me like a blow to the heart. She began denying everything I had said. "We were just having coffee, Jake. I don't understand why you're being so suspicious." She chose her words carefully, as if trying to convince both herself and me at the same time. But I could see it in her eyes. She was nervous, her voice was growing defensive, and I felt like I was witnessing a performance where every word she spoke was an act of self-preservation. It was obvious. She was denying everything I had seen, but it wasn't the truth. There was no truth in her words that I could accept. "Emma, I saw you with Mike. How can you deny it?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. But she said again, "It's not what you think. I don't know what you're imagining." I started to realize that her words were just a mask, hiding her fear and guilt. I wanted her to confess, just this once, but that wasn't her style. She was too skilled at avoiding the truth. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get a single fact from her. My intuition screamed that there was something hidden, but I couldn't get the answers I needed to hear. With every denial, I felt my patience were thinner, and instead of answers, I was left with more questions. It was that moment when you know the truth is there, but every attempt to grasp it only makes the situation more tangled. We stood there in the room in complete silence, and I felt the growing chasm between us. I looked at her and couldn't understand why she was so adamant about denying the obvious. You want to believe in the person you've trusted your entire life, but here you stand, unable to understand why they won't admit the truth. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. My head was spinning with thoughts about everything that had been happening over the past few weeks. After my conversation with Emma, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but her denials only deepened my suspicions. Sometimes, there are moments when your intuition screams that you're on the right path, even when everyone around you tells you you're mistaken. I couldn't delay any longer. I decided to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I didn't know what I was looking for, but instinct led me to where the answers might be. I entered our bedroom, my heart pounding in my chest. Emma had left her phone on the table, forgetting to take it with her. It was my one opportunity. I stood there for several minutes, hesitating, unsure if I should go through with it, but in the end, I made the decision. I wasn't prepared for what I found. At first, it looked like ordinary messages, chats with friends, plans for trips. But then I stumbled upon something else. I opened one of her conversations and saw messages that were nothing like what I had imagined. "I can't wait to see you again," Mike had written. "You're so hot, I can't stop thinking about our night," read another. I stood there, staring at the screen, struggling to believe my eyes. But these weren't just words. They were the undeniable confirmation of what I had feared most. I scrolled through more messages, and they only got worse. They were planning meetings I couldn't even fathom. Dates, times, places. They had met countless times, and she hadn't even tried to hide it. But that wasn't all. I came across photos, pictures of them together, gazing into each other's eyes, embracing, with her hand resting on his chest. I was speechless. I couldn't understand how I hadn't seen this before. This was a betrayal that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't just emotional infidelity. It was physical, real, and brutal. I kept scrolling through more chats, and then I came across videos. On the screen, I saw the two of them, Emma and Mike, on one of those romantic evenings when they thought no one would see them. They were in bed, and although the video wasn't very clear, there was no doubt in my mind about what was happening. Their bodies intertwined in the same intimacy I had once shared with her. This was the woman I had considered my wife, but now she was a stranger. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my head. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her and tell her I knew? Should I face Mike, the man I had considered a brother? But no matter what I chose, I was already trapped in a nightmare with no way out. I felt as if my entire world had come crashing down, the betrayal of the two closest people in my life, now an undeniable reality. That was the moment I realized everything I had trusted, everything I had built over the years had just disappeared. And while I thought I had prepared myself for any outcome, I wasn't ready for this shock. As I put the phone down, it felt as if my heart had stopped beating. All those moments of doubt and suspicion over the days and weeks, all the times I tried to convince myself I was wrong, suddenly shattered into thousands of pieces. I felt everything I had once believed to be true, everything I had worked so hard to build, begin to crack. This wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal by the two most important people in my life. What I saw didn't register in my mind. It was like a punch to the gut, as if someone had sucked all the air out of my lungs. I sat on the couch, clutching the phone in my hands, staring at the screen, at the photos, messages, and videos that should never have existed. I couldn't believe it was all real, that this had actually happened. How could she, my wife, do this? How could Mike, my best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone else, do this? It seemed impossible. I felt an overwhelming pain that couldn't be described in words. It was like being thrown into a deep abyss, falling endlessly, not knowing if I could ever stand up again. I felt as if I had lost everything I had, lost trust in everything, in people and myself. She was the one I loved, the one I trusted, the one I planned my future with. And now I learned she was with him. With him, my childhood friend, the man I had shared so many moments with, that he had become part of my family. I couldn't even imagine this was possible. The disappointment was so deep that it seemed boundless. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the worst kind of betrayal. It felt like someone I considered a brother had stabbed me in the back. Then both of them laughed at me, indifferent to the consequences. I looked at those photos and videos, at the messages, and couldn't comprehend how it had all happened. How had I not noticed this? How had I not seen it sooner? All those years of laughing together, making plans, and sharing experiences. I never thought Mike was capable of this. He was part of my family. We shared the most intimate moments, and he knew everything about my fears, dreams, and vulnerabilities. I couldn't understand how he could take everything we built together and destroy it. I didn't know what to do. I felt alone, even though there were people around me. My emotions were all over the place. At first, I felt anger, then pain, and now I was overwhelmed by disappointment. My trust was so shattered, I couldn't even find the words to describe it. I didn't know how to look people in the eye or how to move forward with this truth. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. I felt the bitterness consuming me, and I didn't know where to find an escape. It was like a curse I had brought upon myself by letting them into my life. And I didn't know if I would ever be able to trust people the way I once did. Because this betrayal, this injustice, was so painful that I couldn't imagine how to piece together my heart and soul after what had happened. I try to understand how all this could have happened, but every time I try to replay the events in my head, I hit a dead end. All these years of trusting her, of thinking of Mike as my brother, I couldn't even imagine this was possible. How did I miss the signs? How did I not see what was really happening? Why did I allow myself to be so blind? These questions haunt me. I constantly try to break everything down to understand where I went wrong, but it seems there are no answers. Everything I saw, everything I believed in, just fell apart in one moment. And this betrayal was not only a blow to my trust, but to my entire worldview. I never thought I could be so deeply betrayed, and certainly not by the people I consider closest to me. I feel like the entire world I built suddenly shattered. My trust in people, it no longer exists. I can no longer believe in those around me. My ability to trust has been destroyed so deeply that even when I try to build new relationships, whether friendships or otherwise, I always feel a wall between myself and others. I'm afraid to open up again because now I know betrayal can come from the person you least expect. I'm afraid I'll never find someone I can trust as much as I once trusted Mike or Emma. But the worst part is that this has changed me. I can no longer be the person I was before all this. I've started seeing people in a different light. All those moments of trust, those mutual promises and desires to be together, they all now feel empty. My belief in genuine relationships and people's honesty has been shattered. I now doubt every word, every gesture, every glance. And that feeling of fear and uncertainty follows me even as I try to live a normal life. This has changed how I view relationships, how I perceive love, and what it means to be a faithful partner. I can no longer trust blindly. Now I'm always on guard, even when things seem to be going well. And it's hard to live with this shadow that always hangs over you. On the other hand, it has also taught me that true strength comes from being able to accept pain and move forward. I realize that I can't change what happened, but I can choose how I move forward. That doesn't mean I'll forget, but it does mean I can let go of the pain and start trusting myself again. I don't know when I'll be able to fully open up to other people again, but I know that to move forward, I need to accept my wound and understand that this experience has become a part of me. The consequences of this betrayal will stay with me for a long time, but I hope that over time, I will be able to rebuild my faith in people, even if it will be difficult. I understand that this experience made me stronger, albeit in a painful way. And perhaps at some point, I will find a way to believe in people and build relationships based on genuine trust. But for now, I must live with this truth and try to move forward step by step. This story doesn't end with betrayal, as painful as it was. I want to share how it has affected me and how, despite all the pain and disappointment, this experience became a turning point in my life. I won't lie. This was one of the darkest periods of my life. I went through such a deep betrayal that, at first, I thought I'd never be able to return to a normal life. I felt like my relationships, my trust, my ability to love, it was all destroyed. But over time, I began to realize that this pain, while terrible, gave me a chance to see life from a new perspective. I can no longer blindly trust everyone, but now I know how important it is to protect myself and my emotional well-being. I've become more cautious about whom I place my trust in, but at the same time, I've also learned not to shut myself off completely from the world. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about learning that I can grow stronger even through the toughest trials. After enduring this pain, I've come to understand one important thing. I don't want to be someone who lives in the past, running away from their emotions and what happened. I've embraced this experience as part of who I am. It has changed me without a doubt. I've become more self-aware, more understanding, but also more cautious. Now I know that everyone has the right to make mistakes and that there is freedom in choosing to move forward. I'm learning to trust again, but in a different way. My ability to open up to others hasn't disappeared, But now I understand that true trust is not only about having an open heart, but also about being able to protect yourself when necessary. I don't just rely on others. I also rely on myself. My belief in people still exists, but now I know how to set boundaries, learn from my mistakes, and better protect my emotions. This experience, though painful, became the moment that allowed me to see that I'm stronger than I thought. I've started to view life from a new perspective. I'm no longer afraid to open up to people, but I'm also not afraid to be alone if it means preserving my inner strength. I'm ready to move forward. I don't know what lies ahead, but I know I'll never be the same as I was before this betrayal. I'll be stronger, wiser, and more confident in my decisions. I won't let this painful story define my future. It became part of my journey, but it's not the end of my story. And I believe that ahead lies light, even if it still feels distant. Yes, I have endured a painful betrayal, but this experience has profoundly changed me in ways I never thought possible. It shattered me, tore apart everything I once believed in, and left me questioning my ability to trust, to love, and even to move forward. But through that darkness, I found something I didn't expect: resilience. And with time, I've come to understand that even the most devastating moments can become opportunities for growth, strength, and renewal. Now, I am ready to move forward without looking back. It doesn't mean forgetting the pain or pretending it didn't happen. It means accepting the hurt as part of my journey and choosing not to let it define me. I am learning to believe in people again, to trust again, but in a new way, one that is more balanced and rooted in self-awareness. This trust is no longer blind, but built on mutual respect, open communication, and healthy boundaries. I've realized that true trust doesn't come from ignoring red flags or avoiding vulnerability. Instead, it comes from valuing myself enough to be cautious, yet open, and from choosing relationships that align with my values and emotional well-being. If you're going through something similar, know that you are not alone. The pain of betrayal can feel isolating, as if no one else could possibly understand the depth of your hurt. But I want to assure you that healing is possible. It may take time, self-reflection, and a willingness to rebuild, but you can come out of this stronger, wiser, and more attuned to what you truly deserve. I hope that my story and this journey help you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because even after the darkest moments in life, there is always a chance to start over. There is always an opportunity to rebuild, to rediscover who you are, and to create a new chapter filled with hope, strength, and purpose. You are capable of moving forward, of finding happiness again, and of trusting that life still holds beauty and love for you, even if it looks different from what you once imagined.